The words, "Dear Mom and Dad," are written. Now what? He can't tell them what he is seeing. He can't tell them what he is doing. His eyes see a foreign land. His heart sees the other side of the world. Doug Scott, 2000.
Can I be your superhero?
On April 24th, 1994, Dr. Victor Westphal gathered a handful of soil from this spot, and on May 2nd, 1994, he scattered it at the ambush site in Vietnam, where Lieutenant Victor David Westphal III lost his life on May 22nd, 1968. Dr. Westphal returned with earth from the ambush scene and mixed it here with New Mexico soil on May 5th, 1994.
Won't you take me home? Give me wings to fly. We can run away. Castle in the sky. Won't you take me home?
What is a vet? He or she is the cop on the beat who spent 6 months in Saudi Arabia sweating 2 gallons a day, making sure the armored personnel carriers did not run out of fuel. He is the barroom loudmouth, dumber than 5 wooden planks, whose overgrown fat boy behavior outweighed 100 times in the cosmic scales by 4 hours of exquisite bravery near the 38th parallel. She or he is the nurse who fought futility and went to sleep sobbing every night for 2 solid years in Da Nang. He is the POW who went away one person and came back another, or didn't come back at all. He is the Quantico drill instructor who has never seen combat, but has saved countless lives by turning slouchy, no-account rednecks and gang members into Marines and teaching them to watch each other's backs. He is the parade-riding legionnaire who pins his ribbons and medals with a prosthetic hand. He is the 3 anonymous heroes in the Tomb of the Unknowns, whose presence at the Arlington National Cemetery must forever preserve the memory of all the anonymous heroes whose valor dies unrecognized with them on the battlefield or in the ocean's sunless deep. He is the old guy bagging groceries at the supermarket, moving aggravatingly slow, who helped liberate a Nazi death camp and who wishes all day long that his wife were still alive to hold him when the nightmares come. He is an ordinary and yet extraordinary human being, a person who offered some of his life's most vital years in the service of his country and who sacrificed his ambitions so others would not have to sacrifice theirs. He is a soldier and a sword against the darkness, and he is nothing more than the finest, greatest testimony on behalf of the finest, the greatest nation ever known. He is your dad, your mother, your brother, your sister, your uncle, your aunt, your friend, your neighbor. So remember, each time you see someone who has served our country, just lean over and say, "Thank you." That's all most people need, and in most cases it will mean more than any medals they could have been awarded or were awarded. 2 little words that mean a lot. Thank you. Here is a letter written from someone in Vietnam to the American soldiers, and it was written in October 1965. Dear friend, we are very happy to have you here in our country. We know that you feel homesick, so we write these letters to share with you that loneliness. You come here for the ideal of freedom and die with our people. In the time of war, you and we fight all together against communists. We believe that your sacrifice will bring freedom for us and for the free world in general, and we are always grateful to your noble sacrifice. We hope the war we are fighting will be soon over in victory, and you can go back to your country and see your family. Remember, whether you are here or back home, we always think of you, the brave soldiers of freedom who are fighting for a noble ideal in a faraway country. With all my best wishes to you, yours truly, Unknown. These are regulation prescription glasses, and they were called birth control glasses, and it's a nickname given to the glasses because service members believe that while wearing BCGs, it is impossible to attract the opposite sex because of their unflattering appearance. God Loves the Grunt. Vietnam veteran and acclaimed war artist George L. Skypeck created a work in 1983 to commemorate the service and sacrifice of combat infantrymen in that war. In 1984, Russ Vaughn, former combat infantry NCO with the 101st Airborne Division in Vietnam, became friends with the artist, who personalized a copy of the print for him. That copy faded through a quarter century of display, so Vaughn found a new print and had it reframed and matted with Skypeck's original personalization before donating it to this memorial. Copies of this famous work have hung in the White House, the Capitol Building, the Pentagon, the Veterans Administration, and the homes of Bob Hope, Colin Powell, Gary Berghoff, which was Radar O'Reilly on MASH, Tom Selleck, Gerald McRaney, Senator John McCain, and New Mexico's own Tony Hillerman. The upper part of Jungle Boots made to wear in Vietnam was made of cotton canvas duck with leather for the toe and heel. Water drains were added near the sole to quickly drain water from the inside of the boot. After numerous incidents of foot injuries to U.S. forces caused by punji stake traps, Jungle Boots were fitted with a stainless steel plate inside the sole to protect the wearer. Breastplates were worn by warriors with the intent of protecting the wearer from arrows, spears, and other weapons of battle. They were also worn in ceremonies. This breastplate was made to protect the spirits and to heal the memories of those who served in Vietnam and the Vietnam era. The traditional breastplate was made of bones, beads, and anything the wearer added to aid or enhance his power. This design reflects the power of our brothers and sisters after Vietnam. It is made of spent shells with red, yellow, and green beads to signify serving in Vietnam. The beads are placed in the hollow of the shell to represent honor for all our brothers and sisters who gave their lives as a result of Vietnam for their country. The center is made of traditional hair pipe, which is white, with red and blue beads, signifying the United States of America. The entire breastplate is slightly darkened to represent how our country was and remains tarnished by this war, and to remind us that we are not finished until everyone is home and accounted for. This design in this breastplate represents admiration, honor, and respect for all our fallen brothers and sisters, both in death and in spirit, for those who return to live as normal a life as possible. To my family, the Banyans on the island of Molokai, to my brother the eagle, my companion the bear, and to grandfather for his love and guidance in my healing. The colors in the medicine wheel are my totem and represent healing and live in the spirit and soul of this breastplate. Aho. John, Tall Mountain Bear Madden, the proud warrior, USA, retired. There were about 12,000 helicopters that served in the Vietnam War. Bell Helicopter built 10,005 Hueys from 1957 to 1975. Prior to 1957, there were 3 XH-40 prototypes and 6 YH-40 test helicopters manufactured. Of the 10,005 production Hueys, the first 732 were designated HU-1A and HU-1B. 9,216 of these were sent to the U.S. Army, 79 to the U.S. Air Force, 42 to the U.S. Navy, and 127 to the U.S. Marine Corps. The rest went to other countries. My records show that 7,013 Hueys served in the Vietnam War. Almost all were Army. Total helicopter pilots killed in the Vietnam War was 2,202. Total non-pilot crew members was 2,704. Based on a database from the Pentagon, we estimate that over 40,000 helicopter pilots served in the Vietnam War. During the Vietnam War, the helicopter became an essential asset on the battlefield. Hueys were versatile, equipped for troop transport, cargo, air assault, and medical evacuation. They took the place of the traditional cavalry, leaving troops and wounded soldiers with great speed. One veteran stated, "The saddest moment of my life is when I heard a Huey flying away and I wasn't on it." The distinctive sound of the Huey had a psychological impact on the soldiers in Vietnam. The sound could trigger anxiety at what dangers might lie ahead, or relief at the arrival of supplies, reinforcement, or imminent rescue. Dog tags, used as a means of identifying military personnel, have a long and varied history. Back in ancient Rome, soldiers wore discs called cynoculum around their necks. These discs were made of lead and marked with the soldier's name and unit, serving a purpose similar to modern dog tags. During the American Civil War, an attempt to provide identification tags were called name discs or soldier pins of various designs, and there was no specific uniformity pertaining to the information provided. On December 20th, 1906, by General Order No. 204, the United States government decided upon a circular aluminum disc to be worn as an identification tag, and by 1913, the identification discs were required for all military service members. During World War I, military service members began wearing 2 identification tags. In World War II, military service members were issued a rectangular-shaped identification tag similar to what we know today, with the notch on its bottom edge. It was during World War II that the nickname dog tags was adopted, but it's likely the nickname dates back as far as Thomas Jefferson. During the 1950s, the 2 dog tags were detailed to each service member for a specific purpose regarding accountability. One identification tag was placed on a long chain, while the second was hung on a shorter chain, which became known as the toe tag. Then later, during the Vietnam War, military service members began to place one custom dog tag in their boot, tied in with their bootlaces. Today, the issuance of military dog tags remains an important component of military culture, but reliance on dog tags is more symbolic as technology advances. Dog tags are still stamped with important information such as name, service number, blood type, and religious preference. I have done things that haunt me at night, so you can sleep in peace. I have been away from my family a long time, so that yours can be safe. I have sacrificed a lot of my life, so that you may live free. I have done these things because I have sworn an oath to my country, and I will live by this oath until the day I die, because I am, and always will be, a U.S. veteran. If you are able, save for them a place inside of you, and save one backward glance when you are leaving, for the places they can no longer go. Be not ashamed to say you love them, though you may or may not have always. Take what they have left and what they have taught you with their dying, and keep it with your own. And in that time, when men decide and feel safe to call the war insane, take one moment to embrace those gentle heroes you left behind. Major Michael Davis O'Donnell. The earliest recorded use of canines in combat was around 600 BC by the Egyptians, Greeks, and Romans. However, no military in history has used them as extensively or as effectively as the United States. Military service dogs have served in combat alongside our soldiers from every major conflict since the birth of this nation, but they were not officially recognized until World War II with the birth of the United States Military Canine Corps on March 14, 1942. Prior to World War II, dogs were mostly used as message carriers and sentries, but nowadays they're trained to perform a wide range of highly specialized tasks, such as sniffing out bombs and drugs, tracking people, and even attacking when necessary. There are about 2,500 military war dogs in service today, with about 700 serving overseas. The Vietnam War is the largest deployment of military working dogs in United States military history. While official records weren't maintained in the early days of the war, estimates suggest nearly 5,000 canines were deployed across all 4 branches of the U.S. military with 10,000 total handlers. A common fallacy is that all MWDs are German Shepherds. However, there are several different breeds that are utilized for military service, such as German Shepherd, Doberman Pinschers, Labrador Retrievers, Dutch Shepherds, and Belgian Malinois. Signatures of Freedom. On a fateful day in 1973, Red Cross volunteer Mary Ellen Norwood went, in her words, to witness history. A group of American POWs had been released by the North Vietnamese and were headed home. Their first stop was the hospital at Clark Air Force Base in the Philippines, where they would undergo medical exams and treatment before returning home. Mary Ellen volunteered in the medical records department at the base hospital. Although she didn't have to work that day, she made it a point to be at Clark to greet the returning POWs. It was a long time ago, but I seem to remember standing at the door of the hospital as the POWs were coming in. Some were on stretchers, some were in wheelchairs, and some walked in. I have no idea what possessed me to ask some of them for their autographs, but I'm glad I did. All in all, it was a great day, and I remember feeling so patriotic and so grateful for their sacrifices. Tap Code is the true story of ex-Vietnam POW Colonel Carlisle Smitty Harris, who brought hope, strength, and the love of God to fellow American POWs by secretly reviving a long unused military communication code. It was a lifeline as they endured torture and abuse, bringing unity and ultimately helping them prevail over a brutal enemy. Tap Code shares never-before-told stories of underground operations during the Vietnam War while weaving an inspiring story of true love, honor, and courage as husband and wife endured the hardest circumstances they had ever faced. When Air Force pilot Captain Carlisle Harris was shot down over Vietnam on April 4, 1965, he had no idea what horrors awaited him in the infamous Ho Lo prison nicknamed Hanoi Hilton. Harris was the sixth American POW captured in the air war over North Vietnam, and for the next 8 years, Smitty and hundreds of other American POWs, including John McCain and George Bud Day, suffered torture, solitary confinement, and abuse. Their dignity was taken, their wills were challenged, and their bodies were bruised and battered. But in the midst of the struggle, Smitty remembered once learning the Tap Code, an old, long unused World War II method of communication through tapping on a common water pipe. He covertly taught the code to many POWs, and in turn they taught others. Simple and effective, the Tap Code quickly spread throughout the prison and became one of the most covert ways for POWs to communicate without their captors' knowledge. It became a lifeline during their internment, a morale booster, a vehicle of unity, and a way to communicate the chain of command, and was instrumental in helping them prevail over a brutal enemy. Back home, meanwhile, Harris's wife Louise raised their 3 children alone, unsure of her husband's fate. One of the first POW wives of the Vietnam War, she became a role model for many wives, advocating for herself and her children in her husband's absence. Told through both Smitty and Louise's voices, Tap Code shares a riveting true story of ingenuity under pressure, strength and dignity in the face of the enemy, the love of family, and the hope, faith, and resolve necessary to endure even the darkest circumstances. During the Vietnam War, nearly all Navy women played their usual role. They took over the jobs of Navy men in the United States, releasing them to fight the war. Only a handful of Navy women, other than nurses, actually served in Vietnam, but related events at home affected all Navy women. The first woman to serve in Vietnam was Lieutenant Elizabeth G. Wiley, who reported to the staff of the commander of naval forces in Saigon in June 1967. She spent 3 to 6 days each month in the field, gathering information and taking pictures. The second-line officer to serve in Vietnam between 1968 and 73 was Lieutenant Susan F. Hamilton, who in 68 was assigned to the naval staff in Saigon. Lieutenant Commander Barbara Bull and Lieutenant Sally Bostwick later joined her. Commander Elizabeth Barrett was the highest-ranking woman naval officer to serve in Vietnam and the first to hold a command in a combat zone. She arrived in Saigon in January 72 and in November became the commanding officer of 450 enlisted men in the Naval Advisory Group, a position she held until she left Vietnam in March 1973. She was 40 years old, had 19 years of naval service behind her, and knew that some of the men in her command were not too pleased to have a female commanding officer. gave them something to talk about, she said. During her 15 months in Vietnam, she had 3 days off. Victor Doc Westphal, Ph.D., was the force behind this memorial. Doc and his wife Jean purchased 800 acres at Angel Fire to build a resort. But when their son David was killed in Vietnam, their plans changed. Jean felt that the money from David's insurance policy should be used towards a permanent memorial. Doc dedicated the rest of his life toward this goal, the Vietnam Veterans Peace and Brotherhood Chapel. Doc staffed the memorial daily, reaching out to grieving families and welcoming veterans home. When Doc passed away on July 22, 2003, he was buried with full military honors just yards from the chapel. He is remembered as a man who honored Vietnam veterans at a time when few recognized their sacrifice and suffering. There are a number of reasons why it was decided that the Vietnam Veterans Peace and Brotherhood Chapel must be built. One of these is especially important. When his father was serving in the South Pacific during World War II, David's mother purchased for him a book entitled Wings for Per. This book was his favorite childhood possession. It could not have then been known that he would one day serve his country in the war in Vietnam, and that his last official address and home would be Valverde Ranch, Eagle Nest, New Mexico, in the foothills of Wheeler Peak, highest point in the state. Prior to his departure for Vietnam, David designated a number of his books as a gift to the local school library. His last action before going to the bus on his way to Vietnam was to bring Wings for Per to his mother and say, "I can't give this book. It is worth 1,000,000 other books." The conclusion of Wings for Per reads, "Then I will fly up into the clear, washed air of spring and soar over the eagle's nest and over my home under the crag. Mother will stand in front of the house and clasp her hands in wonder. She will say, 'Look, Per has wings.'" David Westphal once said, "My fellow citizens pay the taxes to support me, and I intend to be worth the pay." His father later said, as matters developed, he was to give his life to earn his pay. David also said, "If we are to stand on our feet in the presence of God, what then is one man that he should debase the dignity of another?" David was killed in an ambush near Con Thien, South Vietnam, on May 22, 1968. He is buried in the National Cemetery in Santa Fe, New Mexico. When sons or daughters die in battle, parents are confronted with the choice of what they will do to honor the courage and sacrifice of that son or daughter. Following the death of our son, we decided to build an enduring symbol of the tragedy and futility of war, Doc Westphal. A labor of love, the Westphals sold all but 5 acres of their 800-acre property to construct the memorial. The soaring chapel was completed in 1971 through the work of Doc, his son Walter, and volunteers. The chapel's unique and timeless design was the vision of Doc and Santa Fe architect Ted Luna. As a New Mexico state park, the memorial underwent major renovations from 2007 to 2010, including the addition of an amphitheater. The park continues to serve as a venue for healing and remembrance. Warrant Officer Louis Richard Rocco distinguished himself when he volunteered to accompany a medical evacuation team on an urgent mission to evacuate 8 critically wounded Army of the Republic of Vietnam personnel. As the helicopter approached the landing zone, it became the target for intense enemy automatic weapons fire. Disregarding his own safety, Rocco identified and placed accurate suppressive fire on the enemy positions as the aircraft descended toward the landing zone, sustaining major damage from enemy fire. The aircraft was forced to crash land, causing Rocco to sustain a fractured wrist and hip and a severely bruised back. Ignoring his injuries, he extracted the survivors from the burning wreckage, sustaining burns to his own body. Despite intense enemy fire, Rocco carried each unconscious man across approximately 20 meters of exposed terrain to the Army of the Republic of Vietnam perimeter. On each trip, his severely burned hands and broken wrist caused excruciating pain. But the lives of the unconscious crash survivors were more important than his personal discomfort, and he continued his rescue efforts. Once inside the friendly position, Rocco helped administer first aid to his wounded comrades until his wounds and burns caused him to collapse and lose consciousness. His bravery under fire and intense devotion to duty were directly responsible for saving 3 of his fellow soldiers from certain death. His unparalleled bravery in the face of enemy fire, his complete disregard for his own pain and injuries, and his performance were far above and beyond the call of duty and were in keeping with the highest traditions of self-sacrifice and courage of the military service. Any nation that does not honor its heroes will not long endure. President Abraham Lincoln.